with coverage you can count on. This is the Erie News NOWCAST.
Good evening, I'm Kristen Allen. Thanks for joining us for tonight's edition of the Erie News NOWCAST. New tonight, the end may be in sight for mask mandates in Pennsylvania schools. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf says he will let the masking mandate expire on January 17th and will defer to local school officials. Now, school districts can modify or end the mask mandate starting that same day. The acting health secretary's mask mandate will remain in place for early learning programs and child care facilities. Now, we've reached out to Erie County Department of Health to see if they would roll back their own mask mandate, but they have not gotten back to us just yet. And we're coming off the first full weekend that kids aged 5 to 11 have been able to receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. And both UPMC Hammett and AHN St. Vincent will continue vaccinating that younger group this week. UPMC held their first vaccination clinic for kids last Thursday, where they administered about 100 shots. Their second clinic has happened earlier this evening, but was fully booked, and so is one that is scheduled for tomorrow. The CDC approved the shot for kids last week under an emergency use authorization. The shot is a third of the dose given to people 12 and older. It is still a 2-dose vaccine given 3 weeks apart, so if you want your child fully vaccinated by the Christmas holiday, health officials say you should probably book that first shot soon.
Children are very resilient against COVID, so if they get COVID, they get over it very well. But that vaccination reduces the quarantine. The vaccination prohibits the spread of, COVID within the community. So that's why it's really important that you take your whole family into account when you're looking at getting vaccinated.
To schedule a child vaccine through UPMC Hammett, go online to vaccine.upmc.com. Call your pediatrician or 844-UPMC-VAX. To schedule a St. Vincent locations, use MyChart, call your family practice, or dial 814-CONNECT. And for the first time since March of 2020, Canadians can enter the U.S. through a land border for tourism and non-essential travel. It's big news for the retail and hospitality industries around here who have missed Canadian visitors, but are the changes enough to bring them back? Our Lisa Adams answers that question.
At the Peace Bridge and other U.S.-Canadian crossings, the border is at last open for people from Canada to come into the U.S. for non-essential travel. The Mill Creek Mall hopes it opens the floodgates for busloads of Canadian shoppers.
Well, I think it's going to be great things for Mill Creek Mall business. I know the Canadian shoppers, they typically come and shop very often here, and with them not being able to leave Canada, I feel like it's going to be almost like floodgates coming over, hopefully.
The attraction here is low prices and no tax on clothing, and the mall would love to see the shoppers back for the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. But Canadians crossing still need to show proof that they're fully vaccinated to come in and have a negative COVID-19 PCR test within 72 hours to go home. Nick Scott Jr. at Scott Enterprises thinks those restrictions, especially the cost of a PCR test, may hold people back from making short trips here.
We aren't currently seeing a ton of people coming through, a lot of calls in our reservation department. I think the Canadian government has got some restrictions there that just hasn't created the right formula to get people to come over here freely for a day or 2 or 3 and then go back.
When the busloads come for a shopping trip, they book local hotels and enjoy attractions like Splash Lagoon. He thinks they're more likely to see Canadian snowbirds on their way to Florida for a longer stay than big busloads for a short trip.
The reality is we need some of those restrictions to be released before some place like Erie would feel the impact. Having a couple people come across the border and go through that is fine, but we need thousands of people, not 100.
And officers stopped a man taking a handgun through security this morning at Erie International Airport. The Transportation Security Administration says it stopped an Erie County man who had a handgun in a carry-on bag. TSA officials say the gun was loaded with 5 bullets and was spotted as the bag went through an X-ray machine. Airport police took over and confiscated the gun. You can be fined anywhere between $3,000 and $13,000 for bringing a loaded gun through security. Meanwhile, multiple investigations are still going on in Houston after 8 people died and hundreds were injured during a music festival on Friday. It happened during the Astro World Festival as rapper Travis Scott, a Houston native and founder of the event, took the stage. There are multiple civil suits that have been filed after 8 people died, their ages ranging from 14 to 27 years old. Now, 17 people were transported to area hospitals, including a 10-year-old. Hundreds were treated on the scene after the crowd started to rush the stage. The investigations into what caused this crowd to surge are underway. Travis Scott says he will cover the funeral costs for victims and help provide free mental health services by those impacted by the tragedy. And work continues in Cleveland on the Brig Niagara today. The ship has been there for about 3 weeks, and Captain Billy Sabatini says work has been going well. They haven't found anything unexpected so far. A lot of the work has been done on the paneling on the ship, which has deteriorated over not setting sail for almost 2 years.
Yeah, so when a ship sits and doesn't move, you know, the growth that ends up having a ship like that is rather extensive. Moving the ship actually takes all that growth off of it, but also the wear happens in the exact same spots. I mean, even a ship like the Constitution in Boston, they turn her around every year or so. And with Niagara sitting there, the planking just started rotting.
And the Brig Niagara is expected to make its way back to Erie in early to mid-December. And in more good news, tall ships will also be returning to Erie in 2022. Well, we thank you for joining us for this edition of the Erie News Nowcast. Join us for our next news at 10 p.m. on the CW and 11 p.m. on WICU and WSEE. Have a great night.